Double wedding disaster. Friends ruined their wedding, but not ours. I, 38M, have been married to Mike, 35M, for 3 years, together for 12 years. We are very quiet, nerdy, nature-loving guys, not into flashy displays or drama at all. It was the tail end of the pandemic, and since the borders were partially open, we decided to road trip to Gibraltar and elope. The pandemic was a great excuse not to invite anyone to our wedding and just do what we wanted. When we told our lesbian friends D, 45F, and N, 60F, what we were doing, they decided on the spot that we were going to have a double wedding and immediately started taking over, suggesting a bunch of trashy, expensive things we didn't want. This is the story of how they attempted to ruin our wedding and only ruin theirs. We initially decided that we'd get a rental car together and split it 4 ways, with Mike and D splitting the driving. A month before the wedding, D and N decided it'd be cheaper to take the train. Well, 6 trains actually, across 3 countries. I immediately said no, and it turned out D didn't even have her driver's license and had been driving illegally for years. Mike offered to do all the driving if they split the rental car with us. They declined because it was too expensive and took the train instead. Obviously, it went terribly for them. Trains were canceled, tickets were lost, and they missed out on an entire night in Gibraltar because they were stuck at a random train station in the Spanish countryside. Mike and I had a wonderful road trip and spent a magical night in an Airbnb in Cartagena on the way. Their train tickets cost more than half of the rental car. We initially agreed to get a really fancy Airbnb in Gibraltar with a hot tub and all that stuff. Split 4 ways, we could get something really nice. Well, and decided she wanted a real hotel and pulled out of the Airbnb plan. I found a gorgeous little 1-bedroom place for us with a hot tub and a view of the sea. D and N forgot to book a real hotel and ended up in a freaking awful place by the port, like a place for merchant sailors to crash while they're in port. It was on a busy roundabout opposite Burger King. There was no bath, no balcony, and it was basic AF. It was more expensive than our lovely place. They got no sleep because of the drunk sailors and traffic noise. They didn't even get any towels provided. The night before the wedding, we met for dinner. They'd barely been in Gibraltar for 2 hours, whereas we'd been relaxing since the day before. At dinner, things were tense, but Dee was really trying. At some point, she signaled to the restaurant host, and the lady came over with a super fancy VIP bucket with champagne on ice. She popped the cork and gave it to Dee, who handed it to Anne, saying, "Just like the one I gave you in New York, baby." It was clearly supposed to be a romantic moment, and refused the cork, and we all smiled nervously to try and smooth things over. The host poured 2 glasses of the champagne and gave the glasses to Dee and Anne, and took a sip and immediately spat it out, announcing loudly, "It's corked." We all tried the champagne and told her it was delicious. Mike and I don't really drink, but we know what champagne tastes like, and insisted the champagne was corked and loudly announced they wouldn't be paying for it. The host was pissed, and I understood why when she told us it was a 750-pound bottle. She threatened to call the police, so Dee sheepishly paid for it, and sulked the rest of the night. I was so embarrassed, and our whole evening was spoiled. When we got back to our Airbnb to take a bubble bath and eat Jaffa cakes, I told Mike there was no way I was going to allow them to ruin another minute of our trip, but if they wanted to ruin theirs, that wasn't my problem. The actual weddings went off okay, apart from the fact they were still drunk from the night before. The registry office was nice, and I married the man of my dreams. Afterwards, we bought them brunch to soak up the booze and faithfully walked them around the park, taking lovely photos of them. Dee had her finger over the lens of every picture she took of us. When we were done, they suggested we all go to the pub and get wasted, as if. We dropped them off at the pub and went our separate ways. I was honest and just told them, I want to be alone with my husband. They couldn't really argue with that. The wedding dinner. Mike, Dee, and I all had fairly casual preferences for a restaurant for the wedding dinner, but it insisted on a fine dining fish restaurant that didn't even serve dessert. I outright refused. I don't eat fish at all, and Anne was insisting on the fish restaurant. so we decided not to meet up. And also tried to convince us to chip in 200 pounds for a custom wedding cake to get delivered to the restaurant, but we said hell no. Mike and I went to the best steakhouse in Gibraltar. I had a 1.2-kilo steak and an amazing cheesecake for dessert. We had a lovely time, and the wait staff went out of their way to spoil us. Around 8 p.m., they messaged us, "Where are you?" And we ignored the message. As it turned out, and forgot to make reservations, and the fish restaurant was fully booked, but they couldn't leave and go somewhere else because they had to wait for the cake to be delivered. They ended up taking the cake back to their shitty hotel and eating it with their credit cards because they didn't even have cutlery and plates in their room. They got hammered that night on supermarket vodka. Mike and I had the perfect evening. We got a taxi home, smoked weed on our balcony, watched the stars, and kissed for hours. The next day, Mike and I set out for a day of hiking in the UNESCO World Heritage Site National Park. It was the best day ever. Mike got robbed and bitten by a monkey, which was fucking hilarious. We ate a full English breakfast in the Sky restaurant and explored St. Michael's Cave. Unforgettable memories were made. And in fought, decided it was Gibraltar's fault, and spontaneously decided to leave. They booked a beach resort up the coast somewhere in Spain and headed on foot to the train station. The trains were all messed up. They got stranded somewhere in Spain with all their luggage, and it took them 14 hours to get to the resort. They arrived at 11 p.m. and were checking out the next morning. Mike and I spent a few more nights enjoying our honeymoon and then tripped home. We stayed in the same little place in Cartagena on the way back, and the host threw us a little surprise party. It was magical. And then got stranded again on the way home, lost half their luggage, and caught COVID.